All right, I haven't been posting any progress videos, so I thought I would do kind of one big one. This will definitely be the biggest one I've done to give you a layout of the ambulance, kind of why I did what I did, where I'm at, what I would do different, and maybe I won't post any of this, but yeah, let's give it a shot. One thing I should mention right away is that the reason I'm building this is that my wife Natalie needs basically a place to live when she's commuting to work almost half the month. So my whole design thing with this was to make it as homey as possible because it's basically going to be used for full-time living or have the option for that. So that meant that I wanted to have a bathroom, a shower, basically a full usable kitchen and a good table space and all that. And I guess I'll get into more detail about that in a second here. All right, let's start at the door here. So this is the main entrance door, and there's actually going to be a screen here if you watch the other videos that I've posted that'll kind of turn that into a privacy booth. If you're going to live in here full time, in case you're sick or you get up in the middle of the night, toilet is a nice option to have. So this actually will slide out. You'll have a full booth to yourself, and that was really important that I have that. If you look on the other side here, the got stuck there. If you look on the other side, I have another one that has a shower pan that's going to slide out. I might not get that done right away, but basically this is going to be kind of a little shower bathroom. It's not the most ideal, but it'll basically be better than nothing when you need something. And talking about the shower, the plumbing is going to be in here. Actually, I'm waiting on something that's been back ordered. This counter isn't on permanently yet, but more or less, these are the plumbing lines for the shower. And there's actually 3 here. So you have cold water supply, hot water supply, and then there's a return line to the main tank. And the reason I did that is that if you're trying to conserve water, instead of trying to prime the pipes to get all the hot water, if you're running the water, you're losing it. So you can actually run this back to the tank and recirculate it till it gets hot. The other reason I like that too is if you wanted, you could really pump up the water storage and let's say heat it up 30 degrees, and that'd be a really big thermal mass to help keep things warm. The last reason that I actually wanted to do that as well is that if you just cracked the line a little tiny bit, you could keep flowing water through all the lines, and it would stop the pipes from freezing if you're in a really cold situation or something like that. The pump would just kick on, maybe once every 15 minutes for, a couple seconds, and that would keep warm water and water circulating through the lines. I guess we're right here anyway, so we'll keep it going. But here's the dimmer for the light switches. Basically, these are the ones over the dinette. I don't have all 4 of them, but this other slider is for the lights in the kitchen. So if you're looking for a good LED dual zone slider for 12 volts, I got this off Super Bright LEDs. I couldn't find it anywhere else, and I think it was like $30, so that's pretty good. This knob coming out here is basically for the fan for this coolant heat exchanger. So if you're driving, this thing will pump out the heat into the back, and that knob will control that fan. There is another heater. I actually don't have it working right now, but basically it's a diesel fired heater, and I might have to change it out from a GM model, but basically I'm hoping that I can run that without the engine running if I ever needed to. Another reason I put this heater core over here is I wanted a heat source kind of by all the water stuff. I put the water tank on this side of the vehicle just to balance the weight. It's kind of crazy because you don't really need the water till you go over to the kitchen, but I wanted to have the vehicle mostly balanced, so that's why that ended up there, and underneath the bench for the dinette was just a good spot for it. These composting toilets constantly pull air through them and vent them to the outside, so even though they're not super odorous, they're always pulling air through them to kind of dry everything out, and if there is a little bit of a smell, be taking fresh air out of the cab and then expelling that air outside. What I'm doing here is this is actually going to be where my garbage and recycling and compost goes, and that toilet's going to be sucking air from here. So I figured if your garbage is making smell, they can suck out through there and then out through the toilet and outside. So I'm kind of getting a 2-for-1 to kind of deal with some of the smells of living in here. Over here is the fridge cabinet. I don't quite know what's going on with this fridge. I have You can see it's not sitting flat. It has no feet on the back. It doesn't look like there's anything, but I'm gonna end up bolting it down, so I'm not too worried about it. This thing pulls as many amps as a truck fridge. It's worth the same amount of money to buy, and it's twice the size. So it almost seems a little overkill, but having your own freezer, like I said, I wanted this thing to be basically like home. You know, I think this is gonna be pretty awesome, and I had the space for it. And if you're going on a week with, you know, some friends and stuff, that's gonna be a really great asset. Down here, this isn't finished up at all, but that's just gonna be like a broom closet for hanging tall stuff, things like that. Down here will probably be the junk drawer where all the madness ends up going, that you don't have a home for it. And then this is gonna be a special compartment that's basically used. My wife's airline pilot, so you know there's some issues with having bags in hotel rooms and stuff like that. You want to keep all your clothes separate from other stuff, so this is kind of like the quarantine zone where you know, her traveling suitcase will go, and then that'll be its own little thing. So coming over here, I just have this blanket hanging. This is the coldest part. It's not really doing much, but it actually is probably about 10 or 15 degrees colder behind there. I'm actually going to make something that's more fit and velcros in, that's made out of maybe a repurposed sleeping bag that's for, you know, -7 or something like that. But just to say, even with this, just this blanket that's barely blocking any of the heat off, it's -25 today. I guess it'd be like, I don't know, -8 or 10 Fahrenheit. And I have the thermostat set at 15 in here, and it's really comfortable. It's not having any problems keeping up with the temperature, and that's even with these big aluminum doors still. Those doors are insulated, but it's aluminum on aluminum, so there's a lot of thermal bridging with that. I did put an extra inch of insulation in here to kind of bridge there's some thermal bridging that I wanted to deal with, because all the studs are aluminum, and if you added them all up, it was about this sheet of plywood size that would have a, you know, basically thermal bridge to the outside. It's in aluminum, so it would conduct really well. So you can see that is actually how much thicker I made the walls, which made its own challenges. You can see these windows are going to be octagons, or yeah, is that octagon? Hexagon. And basically I did that because it's going to be really hard. I'm not a good carpenter to trim out a round window, so I figured, you know, I could just, when I trim these out, I can just cut them on 45s, and that'll look, you know, fairly decent. Another thing about the heat, basically I have a diesel fired heater. It's underneath the chassis. And some of the way I built this, there's actually a plenum underneath here that acts as my ductwork. This is the spot that comes out in the back, and it kind of has to come up there because the wheel well's right here, and that's the same reason why this toe kick doesn't keep following this profile. So had to come up over here, and now I have a little ductwork that goes down here and, you know, comes across, and I haven't really figured out where all the exit points are, but even as it's set up right now, it's keeping the place pretty toasty. I just might want to work at balancing basically where the heat load all goes. The one thing I would say about the heater is moisture is always a problem in a vehicle this size. So have it draw fresh air. It's not as efficient, but basically it's kind of positively pressurizing the whole thing and moving the air out of the vehicle. And when the warm air comes in, that's helping get rid of that moisture and then expel it outside. You're not recycling that, and that'll help deal with some of the moisture issues you might face. All right, coming over here is where all the electrical is. I basically, this is where the electrical is kind of coming through the ambulance anyway. So I decided to leave everything where it is. The batteries are in a well that's underneath there. There's 200 amp lithium iron batteries. And that gives me 200 amp hours total. There's a 1200 watt inverter under there and a 100 amp converter, and it all kind of comes into here. This isn't really tidied up right now, but you'll kind of get the rough idea. This is my Renogy MPPT DC-DC charger. So basically I can run my solar panels, or I can run off my alternator. So far it's got a couple little quirks to it, but for what I'm doing, it's perfect. I'm pretty happy with it. I also have this on off, I guess I should say one bank or two banks on off kill switch, and I can also cross tie if I ever needed to, you know, start the vehicle batteries or anything like that. The wiring looks kind of nuts under here, but a lot of that is for exterior lights and things of that nature. One thing that is kind of nice here is when I plug into 30 amp shore power, this splits at 15-15. When I plug in, it automatically has a relay that'll kick all the plugs in the vehicle, like all the receptacles, off the inverter, and then power from shore power. And then if I flick this one up, this is actually going to power my converter. So if I need to charge my batteries, I can flick that off. I'm just running off solar right now, and I figure that's better for my batteries the way I have my charge controller plugged up. The one thing about the electrical I should probably say is I did end up running, I wanted to keep everything as close to there as possible. Most things run up in the roof, and that's how the ambulance originally had them. I repurposed as much wires, or as many wires as I could. But I do have a 150 amp, or basically a 2 gauge wire going to this 150 amp breaker, and in here I have my winch for my bed, which I'll show you here shortly in a minute. But this actually ends up going under the floor with the water lines. And then I have another bus here to run all the electrical here, which is my water pump, my heater, the lights, and the fan for the toilet. So it seems kind of nuts, but you know, I do have a lot of power going in different places. So for better or for worse, I decided to do it this way. Since we talked about this winch over here, basically I have this switch here. So if you look, I actually have 4 pulleys in the ceiling. And basically what those do is I can winch or lower a bed out of the ceiling. And the reason for that is, since this is gonna be Natalie's full-time living situation, I didn't want a tiny little bed or something that you converted that had cracks and stuff in it. So this is a full-size king bed with a 6-inch mattress. So the whole thing's gonna be about 8 inches thick. And that's gonna stay sucked up to the ceiling. And when you wanna go to bed, you just flick this switch and it drops it down. It rests on top of here, and I don't have the other rests set up here quite yet, but you'll have a full king-size bed in here. And while I'm pointing back here, this is gonna be the dinette. I kind of hummed and hawed about the design here, and I think I finally figured it out. But basically, there's going to be a spot that flips down here, and be a 60-inch by 30-inch table. And so you have lots of room for friends if you're camping or something like that. This can flip up against that wall if you want to use the full length of that door, and this will be hinged. So this riser is for more storage space. This one will be a drawer. We got a mess down there. And then this one will be pretty much open all the time. You can put long stuff like skis and things like that as well. But that can flip up if you ever need to get a bicycle or who knows, motorcycle in here, something like that. So that one will be flat. This one, oh, sorry, that one will flip down. This one will be fixed. And then the table will come here. So it's actually a pretty huge dining area. Not only that, that one will convert into a queen size bed as well. It's a little bit shorter, it's 76 inches, but the table will drop down in that span. You'll have your cushions come across. They will be the split cushions, but if you wanted, you could lower your king size bed, you know, down to here, and you could have a couple friends sleeping underneath there. So it actually could probably sleep, you know, 4 or 5 people pretty comfortably. Guess we'll go back over to the kitchen. So, you know, oven, 4-burner stove. Under here is where you can keep all your pots and pans, your cooking stuff. Under here is underneath the sink. That'll end up being kind of closed off and finished up a little better. There is a well underneath here, and by well I mean like where a cabinet goes below the floor outside. So a lot of the gray water from the sink, there'll be a big tub under there that kind of collects all that. But that'll also be mostly for storage and everything. This is to turn on the water pump, propane, and when I get the under cabinet lighting, that one will power that as well. I have my thermostat. I can run my inverter from here. And then I have the 2, or a double sink, I guess you would say, with the cutting board over it. So if you need more counter space, the cutting board goes in there. If you want, excuse me, if you want the 2 sinks, you just pull that out. And I mean, I lived in an RV for, you know, for a summer, and I know how nice it is to have a double sink. I thought this was a pretty good option because it's kind of like a little bar sink you can use most of the time, but if you ever need to do a whole bunch of dishes or something like that, you have the option. So, you know, a full, I don't know, it's about 7 feet for the counter here. So then up here, still got to close off the backs of these, but this will just be a flip up and for your dishes and pantry and things like that. These will be drawers down here, more storage down here. And then this is basically the dresser. So you can put all your clothes, fold them in here, and then these will stop them from falling out mostly. And I don't know if I'm gonna have to put some bungee netting or something like that, but I think for the most part, that'll be okay. And again, that's the switch to lower and raise the bed. Over here, this is the hot water tank, direct fired. Basically, I was looking at every camp option, and I do want this thing to be winterized, no issues with freezing and things like that. This was the cheapest direct fired unit I could find, so I didn't have to worry about venting the gas outside the vehicle. The only downside of that is it does need 110 volts. So I do have another plug in here, and this will end up being closed off and being a little more tidy. But yeah, this is my hot water tank, and it's in the vehicle, and I thought that was the easiest way to do it. So I'm not sure if I'll regret that, but I think it'll be okay. And then up here we have more storage for bedding. I kind of imagine this stuff will be for pillows, towels, things you don't need all the time, but when you want to put the bed up, you just throw your pillows in there or something so the bed can get sucked all the way to the ceiling. And then yeah, down here just accumulator tank and some things like that. Not sure if I'll put more storage here, if this will get more full of utility stuff, but that's basically that in a nutshell. One last thing that I didn't really talk about is behind here is the outside cabinet, and basically that's going to be a dry room. If you see a lot of builds, people have problems with moisture in here, and I kind of figured I would solve that by just never having sopping wet things in here. So that's going to be not much insulation, but half insulation on the inside. It's going to be all acrylic. I have a 6-inch vent, a really big fan that's in there. So if you get really wet, you have your ski gear or something like that, you can go to the outside of that cabinet, hang everything up. There'll be a drain in the floor. It's actually a shower. There's a hose that goes out there, so if you have to rinse anything off with salt water or something like that, or rinse the salt water off something, you have all that options. And it's also like kind of like a big garage that you can hang some bikes. It's not super big for that, but you can make it work if you turn the handlebars and stuff like that. So paddle boards, all that stuff. You can also direct the heat in there eventually, so that, you know, if it's summer and you want to dry something out quicker, you can pump the heat into that area. So everything will dry out there. It's kind of like an outdoor storage unit, all in one kind of thing. So that was kind of a quick and dirty tour of the van. I guess I didn't mention, up here's the air conditioner. I wouldn't normally put one in, but it was already plumbed in with the ambulance and stuff, so I figured why mess with it. It was kind of a pain in the butt to work around because I didn't want to disconnect any of the lines. It's a bit ugly, but it's there. Yeah, so if you have any questions about anything, let me know. Oh yeah, this is a max air vent that I put through the ceiling there. Seems pretty okay.